Welcome to the new video of Neurophilos. Get ready to dive into a gripping tale that will leave you breathless, thinking, and inspired. Whether you're here for the mystery, the drama, or the unexpected twists, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. Let's begin. The hidden trap of overthinking. Have you ever felt mentally exhausted before making a simple decision? Not after the decision, before. The kind of fatigue that shows up while you're still weighing options, replaying conversations, or imagining outcomes that haven't happened yet. A choice that should take minutes stretches into hours, sometimes days. And in the end, nothing happens. You don't decide. You don't act. You just feel drained. If this feels familiar, you're not broken and you're not alone. But you should know this. This state is not normal. It isn't a sign of intelligence, maturity, or careful thinking. It's a symptom, a warning that you've fallen into a cognitive trap so refined that it convinces you it's wisdom. Overthinking often masquerades as responsibility. You tell yourself you're being cautious, that you're trying to make the right choice, that weighing every possible angle proves depth and maturity. From the outside, it even sounds admirable. After all, society praises those who think things through. But there's a difference between thinking and getting stuck in thought. One leads to clarity, the other leads to paralysis. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Overthinking is rarely about finding the best answer. More often, it's about avoiding action. It's the mind's elegant way of postponing risk. As long as you're thinking, you don't have to commit. As long as you're analyzing, you don't have to expose yourself to uncertainty, judgment, or failure. Thought becomes a shield. You replay old conversations, searching for what you should have said. You imagine future ones, rehearsing every line. You plan outcomes in detail, hoping that if you think far enough ahead, you'll eliminate surprise. But life doesn't work that way. No amount of thinking will give you guarantees. And deep down, you know that. Still, the cycle continues. What makes this trap so dangerous is how convincing it feels. Overthinking doesn't announce itself as fear. It presents itself as intelligence. It whispers, just a little more analysis. Just one more angle. You'll act once you're sure. But certainty never arrives. It keeps moving just out of reach, like a horizon that retreats the closer you get. This is why overthinking is so exhausting. Your brain burns energy without producing movement. You feel busy, but you're not progressing. You feel engaged, but you're disconnected from real life. Action is replaced by simulation. Living is replaced by rehearsing. And the cost isn't just mental fatigue, it's time. Opportunities quietly pass while you're preparing. Relationships stagnate while you're calculating the right moment. Potential stays locked behind the illusion that you'll act once everything feels safe. Here's what few people are willing to admit. Overthinking is often a defense mechanism. It protects you from discomfort, from the possibility of regret, from the vulnerability that comes with choosing and standing by that choice. Thinking feels controlled, acting feels exposed. But a life lived mostly in the mind slowly shrinks. Decisions pile up, doubt becomes familiar, and eventually thinking no longer feels empowering, it feels heavy. The mind, once a tool, becomes a cage. This chapter is not here to shame you. It's here to name what's happening. Because the moment you recognize overthinking for what it really is, not wisdom, not depth, not maturity, but avoidance dressed in logic, you create a small crack in the prison wall. And through that crack, change becomes possible. Because the problem is not that you think too much. It's that thinking has replaced living, and that is where the real story begins. Two minds, one silent war. You probably believe that you are the author of your thoughts, that every decision you make is the result of careful reasoning, conscious control, and deliberate choice. It feels that way. Thinking appears linear, intentional, and logical. But according to Daniel Kahneman, this sense of control is largely an illusion. Your mind is not a single voice guiding you forward. It is a battlefield where two very different systems are constantly competing for dominance. Kahneman describes these as System 1 and System 2. System 1 is fast, automatic, intuitive. It operates without effort and without asking permission. It is the system that recognizes a face instantly, that senses danger before you can explain why, that reacts before you have time to think. When you brake suddenly in traffic or feel uneasy around someone for no obvious reason, System 1 is at work. It is not emotional chaos. It is compressed experience, patterns learned through repetition and exposure. Most of the time, it is remarkably accurate. System 2, on the other hand, is slow, deliberate, and analytical. This is the part of the mind that solves complex problems, weighs options, plans for the future, and forces focus on difficult or boring tasks. When you calculate numbers in your head, compare long lists of pros and cons, or try to suppress an impulse, System 2 steps in. It feels rational and responsible, and it is, but it comes with a cost. System 2 is energy hungry. It requires effort, concentration, and sustained attention. And unlike System 1, it does not like to work for long. Kahneman describes it as lazy, not because it's incapable, but because it conserves energy whenever possible. The brain, after all, is designed to survive, not to analyze endlessly. This is where overthinking begins. When you habitually distrust intuition, you force System 2 to manage decisions it was never meant to handle. Trivial choices, familiar situations, everyday actions. Instead of letting instinct guide you, you interrogate every option. You analyze routes you've taken 100 times before. You dissect conversations long after they're over. You treat minor decisions as if they carry irreversible consequences. The result is not better judgment. It is distortion. By overusing System 2, you exhaust it. And when mental energy drops, judgment deteriorates. You start seeing risks where none exist. You magnify irrelevant details. You lose the ability to distinguish between what matters and what doesn't. Ironically, the system you rely on to avoid mistakes becomes the reason you make worse decisions. Overthinkers often believe they are being thorough. In reality, they are misusing the mind's architecture. System 1 is designed to handle fast, recurring, low-risk situations. System 2 is meant for rare, high-impact choices. When this balance is inverted, life becomes unnecessarily heavy. There is another consequence that's harder to notice. The more you rely on System 2, the more you weaken your trust in intuition. Each time you override a gut feeling with excessive analysis, you send a message to your brain: I don't trust you. Over time, instinct grows quieter. Doubt grows louder. The inner dialogue becomes crowded, tense, and demanding. System 2, which should be a useful advisor, turns into a tyrant. It demands certainty, proof, guarantees. But real life offers none of these. And so the mind keeps asking questions that cannot be answered. This creates a silent war inside you. System 1 pushes for movement. System 2 demands perfection. Movement is delayed. Action is postponed. And the longer this war continues, the harder it becomes to tell whether you are being cautious or simply afraid. Understanding this conflict is crucial, because until you see that overthinking is not intelligence but imbalance, you will keep fighting yourself. And a mind at war with itself cannot move forward. The key is not to silence analysis, it is to return it to its rightful place. And that begins with recognizing when thinking is helping you and when it is quietly holding you back. When thinking becomes fear, at some point, thinking stops being a tool and starts becoming a refuge. What once helped you understand the world begins to shield you from it. Overthinking is not sustained by curiosity or the search for truth. It is sustained by fear, carefully disguised, neatly organized, and defended by logic that sounds convincing enough to pass as wisdom. You tell yourself you are thinking deeply, that you are being responsible, that you are protecting yourself from mistakes, regret, or embarrassment. But look closer. When you are trapped in overthinking, are you really moving toward clarity, or are you trying to eliminate every possible risk before you act? Are you searching for an answer, or are you searching for certainty? The mind prefers the second. Fear thrives in uncertainty, and the human mind hates uncertainty. When faced with the unknown, your brain instinctively looks for ways to regain control. Thinking feels like control. Planning feels like safety. Analysis feels like progress. But most of the time, it is only motion inside your head, not movement in your life. This is where overthinking quietly transforms into fear management. Instead of responding to reality, you start responding to imagined futures. What if I fail? What if they judge me? What if I choose wrong? These questions don't arise because danger is present. They arise because your mind is attempting to predict pain before it happens, believing that anticipation will soften the blow. It never does. Gradually, the present moment fades. You are no longer dealing with facts, only possibilities. Your mind builds entire scenarios that have no evidence other than emotional discomfort. And once these imagined outcomes exist, they begin to feel real. Fear gains substance. Doubt gains authority. This is where a powerful distortion takes hold. Confirmation bias. When fear is present, your thinking does not become more objective. It becomes more selective. You unconsciously search for information that supports hesitation. You highlight risks while minimizing opportunities. You remember past failures more vividly than past successes. Every thought you generate seems to confirm the same conclusion. Not yet. What feels like careful reasoning is actually self-justification. Your mind builds arguments not to move you forward, but to keep you safe from exposure. Overthinking becomes an internal courtroom where fear is the prosecutor and logic is forced to serve it. The most dangerous part is that this process feels productive. You feel busy, you feel mentally engaged, you feel like you are preparing. But preparation without execution is just delay with a better name. You replace action with simulation. Living becomes rehearsal. And the longer this continues, the more convincing it becomes. Each time you avoid a decision, you reinforce the belief that thinking saved you. You don't see the opportunities you missed, the confidence you didn't build, the momentum you didn't create. Fear is rewarded. Doubt becomes familiar. Action starts to feel foreign. Overthinking also reshapes your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who needs to be sure, someone who can't act until everything aligns. This self-image feels responsible, even mature, but beneath it lies avoidance. And avoidance, no matter how intelligent it sounds, slowly shrinks your world. Life does not require you to eliminate fear before acting. It requires you to move with fear present. Overthinking promises protection, but it delivers confinement. It trades temporary comfort for long-term stagnation. Once you see this clearly, something shifts. You realize that the problem was never a lack of intelligence or insight. It was the misdirection of both. Thinking was used not to engage with life, but to retreat from it. And when thinking becomes fear, the mind stops being a guide. It becomes a gatekeeper. Understanding this is not yet freedom, but it is the moment you stop mistaking your cage for wisdom. The invisible cost of mental exhaustion. Have you ever woken up feeling tired despite sleeping well? Not physically exhausted, but mentally heavy, as if your mind never truly shut down. Simple decisions feel overwhelming. Small tasks require effort. Motivation seems to vanish without a clear reason. This is not laziness. It is cognitive exhaustion, and overthinking is one of its most common causes. The human brain is powerful, but it is not limitless. Analytical thinking, what Daniel Kahneman calls System 2, consumes a significant amount of mental energy. Every time you compare options, simulate outcomes, suppress impulses, or force yourself to think deeply, you draw from a finite reserve. Your mind operates on an attention budget. When that budget is depleted, everything becomes harder. Overthinking drains this reserve silently. Unlike physical fatigue, mental exhaustion does not announce itself clearly. You don't feel sore or injured. Instead, you feel foggy, irritable, indecisive. Tasks that once felt simple now seem heavy. And because the cause is invisible, you often blame yourself. You assume something is wrong with your discipline, your motivation, or your character. In reality, your mind is overworked. When you constantly run simulations in your head, imagining conversations, predicting outcomes, replaying mistakes, you keep your brain in a state of high consumption without forward movement. It is like revving an engine while parked. Fuel burns, heat rises, but you go nowhere. This leads to a state psychologists call ego depletion. As mental energy drops, your ability to regulate yourself weakens. You procrastinate not because you are careless, but because you are depleted. You avoid decisions not because you don't care, but because you no longer have the cognitive strength to engage. The cruel irony is that exhaustion then changes how you think. A tired mind perceives risk differently. It exaggerates danger. It seeks comfort. It prefers delay over action. Decisions begin to feel threatening rather than neutral. And so you postpone them, telling yourself you'll think about them later when you have more clarity. But clarity never comes when energy is gone. Even worse, prolonged overthinking disrupts the balance between your mental systems. When system 2 is exhausted, you don't become calm or intuitive. You become reactive. Emotional responses increase, impulses grow stronger, judgment becomes erratic. You lose the precision of deliberate thinking and the ease of intuition at the same time. This is how the cycle tightens. Overthinking leads to exhaustion. Exhaustion leads to avoidance. Avoidance increases anxiety. Anxiety demands more thinking. Days pass inside this loop. Energy drains. Confidence erodes. Life feels stalled, even though your mind never stops moving. You believe you are being careful, responsible, and patient. But what sustains this illusion is a single recurring thought. If I just think a little more, I'll feel ready. That moment never arrives. The real cost of overthinking is not only fatigue, it is disconnection. From the present, from opportunity, from your own sense of agency. You become a spectator in your own life, watching decisions pile up while waiting for a version of yourself that feels fully prepared. But no one reaches readiness through exhaustion. Mental energy is not restored by more thinking. It is restored by resolution, by choosing, by acting. Even small actions break the loop. They return movement to a system trapped in internal repetition. Recognizing cognitive exhaustion is not weakness. It is awareness. And awareness is the first sign that you are ready to step out of the cycle. Not by forcing clarity, but by reclaiming energy and direction. Because a tired mind does not need more answers. It needs relief from endless analysis. Choosing action without certainty. At some point, every overthinker reaches the same question. If thinking this much is holding me back, then what am I supposed to do instead? The answer is uncomfortable because it goes against everything you've trained yourself to believe. The way out is not more thinking. It is better timing of thought and the courage to act without guarantees. Overthinking survives on a powerful myth. The belief that with enough analysis, you can control outcomes. That if you plan carefully, calculate thoroughly, and anticipate every variable, you will avoid mistakes and regret. But this control never truly existed. Life is not a problem to be solved. It is a reality to be engaged with. No amount of thinking can eliminate uncertainty because uncertainty is built into existence. The mind hates this truth. Uncertainty activates fear. In response, the brain reaches for thought as a sedative. Planning feels calming. Analysis feels protective. But what it really does is delay exposure to reality. You feel safer inside your head than in the unpredictable world outside it. Breaking free requires a shift in how you relate to decisions. The first step is learning to separate high-impact choices from low-impact ones. Most decisions are reversible. They do not determine your identity or your future. Treating them as life-defining drains energy and creates unnecessary pressure. Reserve deep analysis for decisions that are rare and irreversible. For everything else, intuition is not recklessness. It is efficiency. The second step is accepting good enough. Overthinkers chase the perfect choice. But perfection is an illusion that keeps you waiting. Action requires sufficiency, not certainty. A decision does not need to be optimal to be effective. It only needs to be made and followed through. Another powerful shift is placing limits on thinking. Before analyzing, decide how much time and information you will allow yourself. 1 day of research, 2 opinions, 3 scenarios. When the limit is reached, you decide. This interrupts the endless loop where one more thought becomes an excuse to avoid movement. You must also learn to tolerate discomfort. Acting without certainty feels wrong at first. Your mind will protest. It will generate new doubts, new questions, new warnings. That discomfort is not a sign of danger. It is a sign that you are stepping out of avoidance. Growth always feels destabilizing before it feels empowering. Trusting intuition does not mean guessing blindly. Intuition is not random. It is experience compressed into feeling. In familiar situations, your mind already knows more than your conscious thoughts can articulate. Ignoring that signal in favor of endless analysis is not wisdom. It is mistrust of yourself. Mistakes will still happen. This is unavoidable. But here is the truth most people never learn. Confidence is not built by avoiding mistakes. It is built by surviving them. Each decision you make, even flawed ones, strengthens your sense of agency. You learn, you adapt, you move forward. Action changes your relationship with fear. When you act, fear loses its authority. It becomes information instead of command. You stop waiting to feel ready and start becoming capable through movement. There is no moment when uncertainty disappears. There is only the moment you decide to move anyway. And that is where freedom begins. Not in controlling outcomes, not in perfect planning, but in choosing direction over paralysis. Because those who wait for certainty remain trapped in thought, and those who act, despite doubt, reclaim their lives.